You have successfully managed to claw your way into the Casa Berenice Recordings podcast, episode 13.
This podcast is our way to release multi-tracked recordings from house concerts that we host in our living room. We being Clay Chaplin and Heather Lockie, and including our Claude friends Xenotron, Fuzzy, Nemesis, and Fluff Nugget. This episode features a performance by Vinny Golia. It was recorded live at a Casa Berenice house concert on November 2nd, 2019.
Stick around after the performance for an interview with Vinny Golia.
And now, here's Vinny Golia on an array of woodwind instruments.
finish up with this piece for the two-acts. This is just wrote this a couple of days ago, so bear with me. But the two-acts is a version of the contrabass saxophone made by a German maker, instrument maker named Benedict Eppelsheim, who was kind of a genius with not only saxophones and such, but also with contraforte, and I think he had something to do with the lupophone, which is a new version of the bass oboe. A few things like that. This is an earlier model. The serial number is 6. So I've had it a long time. It's first off, it's much more portable than a giant contrabass saxophone, which wouldn't actually be able to be played in here because it's so high. Understand? Anyway, once more, thanks for coming and thanks for inviting me, and we'll see what happens now. I'm Vinny Golia. I play a variety of woodwind instruments. I also compose, and I have ensembles ranging from 70-piece large ensembles to solo pieces.
You've been a fixture in LA forever. Give us the kind of the long view of what your experience has been.
It's actually changed quite a bit. I mean, I first came here as a visitor, but I didn't play an instrument at that time. But I was a painter before that. So I came out here because one of my friends was coming out, and he had been here once before, and he said, like, you've always been in New York or on the East Coast. He said, you should see the colors, in the Midwest, and the colors are different in California and stuff like that if you're really going to be a painter, So I came out with him and met some people that hang with and stuff and such, At the same time, some people that I knew from New York were out here playing. And so at that time, I was using my painting as graphic notation still. I was just starting to do that. And Braxton introduced me to John Carter, Bobby Bradford, Pete Robinson, Ernie Watts, a ton of really fantastic people, Tom Canning, T-Bone Burnett, on and on. Yeah, I mean, some really amazing musicians who had come out here from different places and made LA their home. Then I found out that, not like New York, where you could walk and see 3 shows in a night, you had to figure out like where you were going to go, and you'd have to drive there. But then I found out there were factions of people, like there was a free music, LA Free Music Society in Pasadena, who would be like into just like more of the Derek Bailey, Evan Parker aesthetic. Then there was Horace Tapscott with his ensembles and Watts and all the black musicians playing with him. Then it was John Carter, Bobby Bradford that were separate and doing their thing, and had students like, David Murray and James Newton and such. And eventually I wound up playing with them quite a bit. And then there was a whole white cadre of the Klein brothers and Lee Kaplan playing synthesizer, Eric Von Essen and such. And then there was another faction that was separate even from those guys. So I logged that in my brain. My last painting show was out here in '72, and I had different groups come and play. One of the nights was Braxton and Dave Holland playing E-flat, clarinet, and cello duets. Another night was Tom Canning. One night was Mike Nock did an electronic tape. Chick Corea did a tape. There was a group that Pete Robinson ran. I forgot the name of it, but Ernie Watts was in it, Marty Crystal, Roberto Miranda, all these guys. John Carter Trio played. Bobby was supposed to play, but he had to go back east to play with Ornette Coleman. A few others. I mean, that was my last show, but it went out with kind of a bang, And yeah, and then I started really getting serious about saxophone and then flute, and from that I went into the clarinets and stuff. It was all like really a big wave. But to answer your question, so I knew that was there and why it was there. And then when I came out and was playing for a while, I purposely sought out these little factions to play with different people because I knew they were there, and mostly because of the fact that I had met them when I wasn't a musician. So it's a lot easier to meet musicians when you're not a musician. Yeah. So actually, I started playing with the Kleins quite a bit, and also Emmett Chapman. He invented the electric stick. So I started to cross over into all of these different areas. And in '82, when I formed a large ensemble, I wanted people from each area to be there. Classical musicians who improvised, traditional musicians, black musicians, et cetera, et cetera. So eventually what happened was I wound up at Cal Arts teaching, and I started to see that a lot of the people were not leaving the area. They wanted to stay in LA, so they started doing that same thing, like some people in Pasadena, some people over here, some people, here, some people in the valley, some people back up at school, What I see now is that the younger people have started to embrace this do-it-yourself aesthetic and try to get spaces and ensembles and organizations to continue the effect of playing together once they get out of school. So that's where I see the major difference is like the people who are getting out of school are not going to New York because they realize they can do what they want to do here. And actually, it's maybe not as economically difficult to do it here as it is back there because, the rents and the living situations are not conducive to like being the utmost creative artist. Everybody lives outside of New York in order to play in New York, The first piece was contrabass flute, and there's two pieces actually. One's called Surface Noise, and the other has got a really long title, which I'm not going to say. But there are areas for exploring the textures of the contrabass flute and also the dynamic range of the flute. So you can play up really high. It has a really sweet sound to it, and it's very, very lyrical. And on the bottom, it can be very percussive and can also be kind of actually forceful for the instrument, but you have to slap it and really push it rhythmically, So the piece is built on this kind of schizophrenic approach of having these long sounds and yet punctuated by this really fast stuff. And the challenge is to make the fast stuff clear. That's one of the main challenges, because in the second register of the contrabass, the notes have a tendency to run into each other because there's not enough time for them to speak individually. So you really have to get your articulation on top of it to really make it really push it. So that's one reason I like playing that instrument. The second piece was sopranino saxophone, which is second tiniest of the saxophone family. And that was an afterthought, actually. And the thing that struck me about it is how many colors you can get out of an instrument that's limited now in its range in terms of, like, it's a very high instrument, and how much can you change the sound without it being totally annoying and ear-shattering. And then, the ear-shattering thing is part of it, the beauty of it, but at the same time, it has a very lyrical register, not unlike the oboe in certain areas, that you try and really kind of make malleable. And that was mostly an improv. So for me, and the improvs is like I tend to get carried away with the textures of the instrument. And the last piece was a piece dedicated to George Herms, who's a wonderful collage artist. And I was on the contrabass saxophone, and this is the tubax version of it by Benedict Eppelsheim. And that is the same kind of thing with the bass flute, where your notes, if you're going to play fast, you really have to articulate the notes. And it's weird. This version of it seems to be influenced by, I've been listening to Sonny Stitt, because he's the actual one of these guys that everyone always says is a Charlie Parker clone. But he does some amazing things on the saxophone. And when I first saw him, I didn't appreciate his music. He came to New York with so I used to go to clubs and draw pictures of everybody. And he came with an organ trio, and I thought it was so traditional that I couldn't get past the setting, and I didn't listen to his sound. But I didn't have a way of appreciating, because I was so narrowly into my own thing of modern music, that I didn't appreciate him. And I actually talked to him for a minute because he was really interested in the drawings and stuff, but I just felt I couldn't communicate. So I always felt bad about that. But he is an amazing saxophone player, and you can hear the Lester Young influence when he plays tenor and the Charlie Parker influence when he plays alto. But really, do you know how good you have to be in order to do that? And so I didn't see it at the time,
When did you start to see that?
Well, years ago, there was a radio station out of Northridge, came out of the college, and they played a mystery cut for baritone saxophone. It's an instrument that I play a lot, and I could not peg this guy at all. I thought maybe like Leo Parker or stuff like that, but it was like one of two cuts that Sonny Stitt had done on baritone.
Wow.
And it was like, holy blank, you know. It's like this guy is like amazing. Oh, it's Sonny Stitt. Oh, I met him. Oh, I screwed up.
He's the guy.
This is the guy. He's the guy I didn't
He's
pay
a
any
genius.
attention to. You know, I mean, it was like, that's when I first So I was must have been like 1974. But I mean, like, I could, there's a story about somebody who said, like, oh yeah, man, you sound like Charlie Parker. And the guy takes his horn off and he hands it to the guy and he says, let's see you play like Charlie Parker. I mean, okay. I mean, of course it's not going to be Charlie Parker, right? I mean, because he's a different human. But I mean, like, the virtuosity is unbelievable, right?
Try it.
Yeah.
My God.
So anyway, I mean, I started listening. Just recently, I got the Roost Sessions. It was a record label that he did a number of recordings on, and I've been listening to that. And it's not that has anything to do with what I did with the Tuvex, but in the back of my brain, I'm thinking like it's Sonny Stitt. And I'm playing something fast. It's like, how precise this guy is when he plays something like that, and what the articulations are. So that's what you're going for. You don't want to be like while the other guy's going ta 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 ta. It's in the back of your head.
So was the last piece scored out, or were you improvising the whole time?
It's scored out. It has specific themes and areas that are meant for to be like, it's almost like playing over chord changes in a weird way. But you have a specific theme, and after the first specific theme, then there's a blues section where you set up the mood, and then it goes to another written section where that deals with repetition, which goes to another written section, which eventually winds up with playing that written section in different dynamic ways, which goes into another groove section and stuff. So the thing about the writing is to focus on the melodic information and have areas for transition in terms of improvising, which will lead you to the next section. But the thing to do it is like not do left brain, right brain, 1, 2, 3, click, 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 but to do it like in such a way that it morphs slowly and switches the sides over. And so the transition is smooth and makes one thing into the other. The thing that makes or breaks this music, and my students are so tired of hearing this, is the transition from one major idea to another major idea.
And
like
how you get there.
Yeah, and how you get there. So, with the standard tune, you're playing chord changes. It's a cycle, so it's a closed form. It repeats. You get to the end, you start over. Okay, that's one complete sentence and phrase and stuff. But with the freer stuff, then you have these places that go from here to here. Then there's another whole section. For me, I write a lot of music, so I'm going usually to another written section, and with anywhere from 3 to 6 people in a small group, making that transition, you have to have signposts and keep doing that. When you work with larger groups, like a large ensemble, anything from 8 on up, then you have to have some kind of conducting or some kind of signal or some kind of hand signals or some kind of written section that you can use to morph from to get to another thing. Because the more people you have, this is a Bobby Bradford quote, more people you have, Van, more you have to write. He said for him, like trios were the epitome of like great improvising situations, because it's like a triangle or a period where everything is supported and you can try something and move and do these kind of things. But once you get that fourth person in there, then things can be equal, and in improvisation kind of creates a flatness.
Way harder.
Yeah. So then you have to start writing more. The more people. Julius Hempel was the king. He said like 5 people, 5 parts, and they'd be all like harmonized. And his friend Bakita would always say like, but Julius, 2 horns together playing in unison, that's a harmonization in itself. And Julius wouldn't have it. Like everything had to be like if you had 7 people, it'd be 7 parts. And his music is so beautifully written that you could be playing the harmony part and then all of a sudden be playing the lead part and not realize it. Yeah, I mean, God, it's incredible music. I mean, he's a very underrated composer and instrumentalist, but died too soon, you know. But you can hear a lot of beautiful stuff on some of his recordings, especially the Arista recordings, and a couple in the World Saxophone Quartet, which just features just Julius's music. It's amazing music. For my 70th birthday, this one fellow wanted to do a large ensemble with 70 people in the Bay Area. So he called, he just sent out an email, and in about 2 hours we had 70 people who wanted to play, but not all of them read music. So I wrote this suite based on the Easter Island. They're called moas. They're the statues that look out towards you. Mm-hmm. So the Moai people on the bottom level all could read, and they had there were 28 pieces of music, and I held up a board, and you could pick that. Then the people in the back proscenium stage were the people who didn't read, and I sent them graphic score animated on their iPhones, iPads, and computers, and they could read that when they were cued. So they get a number and they just pull up the number on the computer, and then that thing would play for them and they'd play that. Well, these people were playing notated music and there was people soloing. So yeah, it's pretty intense. It was pretty cool. That was a lot of fun.
They recorded it, I hope, or something.
They did record it. It's on YouTube someplace. My website is vinnygolia.com. I have also a YouTube thing, but I haven't been that good about putting stuff up, which I'll change. And that's, you go on YouTube and look up Vinny Golia, there's plenty of clips. I'll tell you one funny story, and then I'll stop. When I was coming up, I had a job at a music store near the airport. It's like one of those jobs. They charge $35 for a lesson, and you get $5. They take $30. But I had this guy who was an elderly gentleman. He was probably about 87, 89, and he wanted to play a clarinet. It would take him almost half the lesson to walk up to the place, and then we'd play a little, and then he'd have to walk back. And one day I said to him, you're really making some progress. I said, I'll see you next week. And he said, I hope so. And I'll never forget that. That's what I tell people. People say oh, Vinny, I'll see you next time. I just say, oh, I hope so.
Thank you for joining us on the Casa Berenice Recordings podcast. We would like to thank the musicians for performing and our lovely community here in Northeast LA for attending our concerts.
For more information about our house concerts or our current release catalog, please visit our website, CasaBereniceRecordings.com.
And thank you for listening.